Greetings, warfighters. It's the Catholic SWO here, and today's topic is the question why. This is the question why in response to orders given, tasking issued, direction handed out. It's a question that vexes a lot of leaders, and over the years I've had many talks with my peers, with friends who really hate the question why. It really just sticks in their craw. They lament and bemoan this, current generation of folks that are maybe 25 and under, that for them, anytime they're told to do something, it's why. Certainly that's not unique to this generation, believe me. As being 40 years old, I can tell you there's been a lot of whys in the past. So what do we do, right, as leaders? What do we do when we get asked why in response to direction or orders? It's an opportunity, and I will tell you that. I'm going to talk a little bit about 3 different types of whys, but each one of them represent an opportunity to develop, to mentor, and to train. And we should keep that in mind when somebody says why. Okay, so the first why. The 3 of them are, I call them the 3 I's. There's the insolent why, maybe the insubordinate why. There's the insulting why, where somebody's basically calling you a moron because of the order you've given. And then there's the inquisitive why, right? The why that really wants to know the background and the mechanics and how things are working and why things are the way they are. Okay, so you get asked why in response to, hey, Pastor Timmy, I need you to go do this, or Ensign Timmy, I need you to go do that. And they say why, right? A couple things that should first pop out at you. Is this characteristic, right? And which of the whys are you dealing with, right? The insolent or the indignant why typically occurs in a one-on-one situation, or maybe it's a small group, and you're telling somebody to do something, and they want to know why me, right? Why not Pastor Bob or Pastor Jane? Why do I and Timmy have to do this? This is going to assume that they're not normally, as a matter of due course, insubordinate, right, or insolent. There are some folks in the Navy who should not be in the Navy, right, because they can't handle authority, they don't really understand or accept the military hierarchy, and they're just not a good fit, right? But I'd say the overwhelming percentage, 95, 98+% of us get it, and we want to be part of this larger thing, and we want to subordinate ourselves to the authority, and we want to exercise authority over those granted to us. And so we understand that when you give an order, you go ahead and do it, right? Some folks may not get that. Some folks, just because of their upbringing or their experience within the Navy, right? There's folks who may have come in just perfectly normal, and then, boy, they run into a series of bad leadership situations, and they've become completely turned off to authority. That's a possibility. Right, so this is assuming, though, that you're not dealing with one of those, because that's a separate topic and maybe a separate video. So if it's an uncharacteristic insolence or insubordination, why? Ask it back, right? Why are you acting this way, right? Now, you don't do that necessarily on the spot, but you pull them to the side, right, and you say, hey, you're acting out of sorts, right? This is not proper behavior. Your military bearing's gone. Right, I gave you an order, I gave you tasking, it was legal and safe, right? What's the issue? Why are we sitting here arguing about it? Because you just don't know, right? There's stress at home, stress at work. Maybe they just found out something's really wrong with them, and something's wrong with their mom or their dad, and they're struggling to cope at work. If you crush them, right, if you do not give them an opportunity, or give yourself an opportunity to discover the origin of the insolent why, and they are hurting, right, and you just crush them, that can cement the rift in your relationship as leader and subordinate, right? That could sever your relationship, and now you won't be able to reach them, in the future. And in fact, maybe that turns them into these perpetually insubordinate folks who don't really want to deal with authority. So just be careful, right? It's very easy and very tempting to steamroll, right, an insubordinate or an insolent why and just say, knife hand, do it, right? But unless it's unless it's pressing, unless you're in a crisis mode, an extremis, you're driving the ship, you're fighting the ship, you're battling fires, unless it's one of those situations, you probably have the time to sideline the why and address it appropriately and teach and train your sailor why that was inappropriate. There's an assumption that people who work for you are going to know how to behave at all times, and they're not. You're not going to know, right? You've probably been counseled if you're watching this video, and I have certainly, on maybe insolence and insubordinance and losing our military bearing. It's important. Sometimes we do lose our military bearing, and I've been grateful for those who've recalibrated me, right, and got me back on the right track. Even if it wasn't the most pleasant experience at the time, it certainly helps you grow. Okay. The second why is the insulting why. Boy, I've seen this, and I've probably experienced it a couple times. You give out an order, you're at quarters, you got khaki call going on, and you're talking to your group of leaders. Maybe you're a chief talking to all your work center soups and LPO. Maybe you're a department head talking to your divos, or your divo talking to your division. And you get everybody together, and you say, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, right? And you're going to do this, and you're going to do that. Hand out this plan. And somebody's just like, why? Like, why on earth would we do that, right? They don't maybe outright call you stupid, but the body language and the tone says, you're a moron. You're a moron. Why am I listening to you, right? Okay, this is a tough one, right? When somebody is so insubordinate that it transitions into the insulting category. It's tough because for many of us, SWOs especially, our immediate response is to activate doctrine and fire back, right? Just shoot, look, and then kill, right? If you're SWO, hopefully you got that. And we've got to resist that for most cases, right? Maybe you've got a subordinate who just is too full of themselves. Maybe you got a subordinate that could use a little humility, and it's okay from time to time and on occasion that you teach a little humility, right? With a rhetorical, a verbal punch in the face, right? If they're throwing punches at you in this group setting, it's okay to punch them back once in a while. And I emphasize this once in a while. You probably won't hear a lot of leaders say that because, it's the praise in public, punish in private, right? And that's a very true axiom. But sometimes public sins and public grievances need a public response, right? And I cannot emphasize enough that this has to be a limited response, because you will have subordinates who need humility, right? They have none, or perhaps they've thrown it to the side. And you need to teach them humility, right? And very few things teach humility like public embarrassment. Now, mind you, I am not advocating public humiliation. And you need to understand as a leader the difference between humility as a virtue and humiliation as a punishment, as a degradation, right? Because humiliation is the degradation of the individual, whereas humility is the subjugation of the will and the ego to an authority, to a purpose, to a mission, right? And so from a Catholic perspective, humility, you're subordinating yourself to the will of God, to your purpose in His plan and things like that, right? And so into the Navy, the humility is subordinating yourself to your superior, to the hierarchy of which you belong, right? And the legal binding authority that your superior has over you. And so it's not a bad thing. Humility is a virtue, as I said. And sometimes you have to teach that in a on-the-nose kind of way. And I again, for like the third time, emphasize this has got to be used with precision. It is not a blunt hammer that you are just going to crush all of your, insubordinate subordinates with at all times. If you're the guy that is always in PB for T or in public meetings or in conferences, and you're just smashing people left and right for saying why or maybe insulting you, that's tempting. It satisfies the ego. It makes you feel powerful, but at the same time, it's not a good leadership trait to keep long term, and in fact can build you a reputation of being a jerk, or an a-hole. So you just got to be careful. The insulting why take them to the side after the fact, sideline the question, say, hey, great question, or well, I'll tell you what, I'll address that after quarters is done, and pull them to the side, and like with the insolent why, explain why their military bearing needs to improve, and then teach them, right? And if they got a bad attitude, overpower that bad attitude with your good attitude, with your military bearing. Sometimes, again, with the insolent, it's like maybe there's a background issue, maybe they're hurting, right? Maybe someone died, maybe somebody left them, maybe they're hurting, and they come at you trying to swing and score some, ego points because their ego has been destroyed and they're trying to rebuild themselves. And the way they do so is by tearing someone else down, which is why you have to be careful not to tear them down too, right? Maybe you bring them down a few pegs, but then you always build them back up. You always build them back up. If you knock somebody down and refuse to help them back up, you are on the road to being a bully, and you're on the road to being, quite frankly, a terrible leader. So you've got to be cautious about that. Okay, the last why is the inquisitive why, and this is the fun why, right? Because this person wants to know why. They want to know the mechanics of the decision that you've made, of the system that they're working in, and they want to know, sorry, I got some little flying friends around me. They want to know why are we doing this, so that when they're in your position or they move up the chain, that they can make the correct action as they believe you are. Okay, so be careful not to just stamp all over this why. Sometimes somebody's asking an inquisitive why. It's a great opportunity to train, to lend your knowledge, to mentor them, to develop them. And again, if you come out guns blazing and you're just like, shut the F up, and I gave you a direct order, don't ask me why, you'll have taken an opportunity to really cement a positive relationship, right? You'll have taken an opportunity to have built a strong bridge that could last years, and you'll have burnt it to cinders and ashes, right? Be careful when you come out against these whys. You should always look as a first opportunity to build, mentor, develop, and train. Maybe they're asking the why in a group setting and it's not appropriate at the time, right? You're going to have to use your own judgment and read the body language and read the character, right? But, it may be appropriate to explain your method, and it may not be, and maybe you take them to the side and explain afterwards. And that brings me, that's kind of the last why I wanted to talk about it, but it brings me back to, where do the why come from? The whys can either come from just the personality of the person, that they're just the person that's going to ask why, and that's just who they are. Oftentimes I have found that the question why comes up because the commander's intent has not been communicated. The commander's intent is the reason why we're executing this method, why we're executing this mission, why are we taking this route instead of that route. The commander's intent is meant to give the subordinate the background knowledge of the objective and provide a framework for them to execute, which, if they understand the why, if your subordinates know why they're doing this, why are they coming in on Saturday, why are they coming in on late, why are they coming in early, why are they doing this instead of that, if they know that, not only will they be able to adequately relieve you one day and take your job, which is what you want, right? Because all of us are moving, right? Whether or not we're moving up or moving to the side, we're all moving. And so somebody competent has to take our position. If we want to win the next war, we need to be surrounded by competent leaders, competent subordinates who become competent leaders. And so it's imperative that we use these opportunities to train. And it's also helpful when you give this commander's intent to provide a framework, because they will go and execute your tasking, may come up to some obstacles, may come up to some issues, and they don't know what you want. They don't know why you want it. Why do we have to do it this way? Well, this way is not working, so let's go that way, right? But if they don't know the why, maybe there's an important reason why they can't go that way. Maybe they have to go this way, and if they can't, they need to come tell you, or they need to continue in this general direction but not go that way, right? They need to know the why so that they can rule out potential bad courses of action. It's all there to develop your sailor, right? And so if you're getting the question why a lot, take it as a time to reflect. Maybe as a leader, you're not communicating the commander's intent. Maybe you're not giving your subordinates the tools they need and the guidance they need to execute the tasking. That's something to really consider. Okay, well, I'm the Catholic SWO. This has been the question why. Don't get too bent out of shape when your subordinates ask you, right? There's ways to handle it, and be very, very cautious, because you can build up bridges or you can burn them to the ground, and that's a very dangerous approach if you burn them to the ground. All right, thanks, and have a blessed day.